Hello and welcome back to the Yellow Couch. Great to have you with us. So today we have a really interesting topic and a fantastic guest who I'm about to introduce in a moment. So our topic for today's discussion is advocacy, partnerships, and development. And I am so lucky, we are so lucky to have with us a phenomenal guest who is going to really enlighten us on this topic. So without further ado, let me introduce him. Welcome to the couch. We have here Mr. Mike Falke, who is the country director for GIZ Tanzania. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Ella, for having me.
Good to have you here, and thank you. I know you're a very busy person, so it's very good to steal a little bit of your time so that we can learn some more about the work that GIZ is doing in Tanzania and beyond. So, I think that will be my first question. I'm sure there might be some people saying, what is GIZ? What do they do? Who are they? So maybe could you just share a little bit more info on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I will try. Ella, GIZ is usually when you live in Dar es Salaam, you see frequently the cars with GIZ. So it's probably people have seen it, but it's a German state-owned organization implementing development projects across the world. I think currently we're in 120 countries and running thousands of projects, mainly for the German government, but more and more also for other clients. Big ones are European Union, for example, but also private companies. I mean, Shell is for example also using our services. Volkswagen, big foundations, Bill Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, for example. So it's a kind of very diverse forum of clients which are using our services, which are mainly targeted implementing development projects, and development projects maybe for our audience who is not really into the business. It's a very wide range of topic, but basically in a nutshell I would say it's also a way of making the world a little bit a better place. So nice. I could then also later on share with you what we do in Tanzania. Yeah. But I think this is also one of the maybe my motivations why I'm working in this sector, in this area, in this beautiful country.
Nice, thank you, Mike, for that overview. Yes, I will certainly ask more. But my first question is, what does GIZ stand for? It's a German word, right?
The German word, it stands for Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit. And I think according to our corporate communication people, it's not supposed to be translated.
Oh, it's not allowed.
If I do so, I can.
Oh no, can you just give us a yellow couch like first and break the rules? Yeah, no? Okay.
I can do it, It's a German organization for international development, international cooperation.
Okay, nice. So you're in 120 something countries. That's really impressive. And tell us a little bit more about specific programs and projects that you're working on in Tanzania. I think that would be really interesting to hear about.
Yes, I mean, we're here for a long time. I think we started in the 70s, early 80s already. Very early also with development projects, and I think historically in what we call sectors in the area. So I think first of all health is important. Water was always there. Biodiversity. And also in certain fields of good governance. And we have, and that is a specific situation in Tanzania, since Tanzania is hosting the Secretariat for the East African Community and other institutions. We also have a separate portfolio, quite a number of projects with the EAC in Arusha, also a big office in Arusha, and then running projects which are more geared towards the regional economic integration of East Africa.
So it's a lot. It's a lot of development work in a lot of different areas.
Absolutely, yes.
Wow. So how do you make sense of all that in your position? You've got all these hats and all these projects. How are you organized as a team?
Yeah, of course, we're implementing our projects with our own staff. Each project is usually headed by a project leader who is usually also kind of very familiar with the thematic topics, with the topics and the themes of the program. And my role is rather to make sure we have kind of a coherent approach. We have a good management model, and of course leadership plays a great role, because we're currently here in Tanzania. We have something like 40, 50 seconded experts, which are coming, many of them from Germany, but not all of them. We also, for example, we have colleagues from Croatia, from the UK. So there's a diverse stuff also in seconded experts, and we have 150, 160 colleagues which are coming from, which are Tanzanian nationals, which are coming from Tanzania.
Fantastic. So it's a diverse mix. I like the sound of that. Sounds like, yeah, you've got a good situation for some interesting projects. So I'd like to understand, just on a personal level, what was kind of your journey to get to this point working in the development space? Has it always been development for you, or what's your career path been to get here? How do I become country director of GIZ? That's my question.
Actually, it started very early when I was still in school. I always had an urge to kind of discover the world, basically, so go out and discover different countries. Then I became, for some other reasons, I became a lawyer. I went to law school. But before that, actually, maybe that's interesting to mention. I was raised in East Germany, and I was, I think, 18 when the wall came down in Germany. And then all of a sudden, we had all these opportunities. And what I did, and you would probably call it nowadays, you would call it a startup. So we set up with two friends. We set up a travel agency, which kind of expanded really. And in the end, we had a kind of medium-sized company with 20 employees, with 5 offices, and that was like the travel exploring part of my journey. And after that, I went to law school, studied law because I considered it as a very crucial element to run a business as well.
Yeah.
And that brought me somewhere on that road. I came across this development, which is somehow kind of combination, so then my topic was like how you transform societies and administrations and states in a way, how you make sure that certain elements kind of certain criteria are fulfilled, and then basically you are with the development process. And then first I became a lawyer. So I was also private sector. Continued in the private sector for a couple of years, and then I changed and I went to that more public. It's like in between. It's in between private and public. It's not. It's not. I'm not a civil servant. GIZ is incorporated as a private company. But at the same time, most of our clients are public entities, and we are also supervised by the German government. So this is like in between, but still we have to fulfill. We are kind of also managed by numbers, nowadays. So this is, I think, in general, very interesting to be in between public and private sector somewhere.
Very, very interesting. You're kind of the bridge in between, kind of taking the private sector, maybe mindset, some of the elements that having a startup really can be useful in the development space. So you're an entrepreneur, really, in your heart. That's what I'm hearing. You started up a business. You learnt the ropes as you went. You filled the gaps that you needed by, studying the law and building your knowledge there, and then have now since transferred that into the development space. I like it. Very nice case study. Thanks. There. You mentioned, Mike, transformation. I heard the word transformation, or to transform, which is a very interesting topic that we love to talk about here on the Yellow Couch. So can you share a little bit more about the how? When you're coming into a country, and we can use Tanzania as an example, and you're working with public sector, supporting to create programs that benefit the country and its people, how do you go about doing that? Where do you start? How do you influence? How do you create opportunities? How do you build trust? I don't know if that's a secret, but
no,
I'm asking
not
you to
at
share
all.
it.
I think there's more. I would say this is like one of the key principles. We very much. I'm also personally very much focused on, because I think following that principle is a key success factor for our work. And I have seen so many also development programs which are not following that principle, haven't been following, and then it's difficult. So I would call it, it's ownership by our partner host governments or countries, because it's in the first place. GIZ is implementing would be the government-to-government cooperation. But of course, we're also working increasingly with civil society, non-governmental organizations, actors, and also the private sector. So we are in between, sometimes more as a facilitator, but I think the key principle is we supporting the transition, the transform processes, which are intended by our host countries, governments, civil society, private sector. So this is really the idea, and focus there on some issues like sustainability is very keen. I would also say the whole set of human rights and equality is important. So these kind of core value elements play a crucial role. But we support always the our host governments. Example would be if there's a request, so usually our host Tanzanian government, in our case here, would request support from the German government, for example, and then we would be charged to develop out of that request a project which is steered, which is owned by the government of Tanzania throughout the process, and then we're running it with our counterparts together to really make them, empower them to achieve their goals better.
Yeah, great word. So empowerment, nice, and accountability. I think I heard from you as well. So it's being led by the host government on what are their priorities and how can we support you to achieve them. Very nice. So it's an interesting co-creative process, it sounds like. I don't know if this is a question you can answer, but how do you manage situations where maybe you don't necessarily, maybe because there's two governments involved, maybe they don't have the same priorities, let's say. How do you manage situations like that?
It's usually ideally we come into play when there is an agreement, when they say like, this is what we need, and German or whoever, European Union or also other institutions, they would say, well, this is what we would like to support. And then we come in and we would kind of implement the project or supporting that transformation process of the respective host government. We wouldn't come in if there's not an agreement. So if they disagree, we wouldn't be asked to run something, to implement something.
Understood. So basically, the projects and the programs you're working on are already pre-agreed, you're aligned, and you're working together in partnership. Very nice. So maybe if I could ask, what have been some of the key successes that have stood out to you in terms of GIZ's work here in Tanzania? I know I'm putting you on the spot. I know there's many things that you do and have done, but how long have you been in this role now?
I started in pretty much 3 years ago in March 19. 2019 I started, and I think what we have achieved is over that period of time, I'm still kind of under the impression of our government-to-government negotiations we had in October last year, where the German government delegation came here to Dar es Salaam and talked to their counterparts from the government of Tanzania, and they were like groundbreaking projects committed from the German side, which was also approved that the relation between the two governments, they're really good, really also under the new leadership, I think really there's loads of potential. And maybe to name just two to make it a bit more tangible, we're currently planning 2 projects which I'm very keen on, very interested in. The first one is called Access to Justice for Women and Girls, which pretty much the intention is to, especially in cases of gender-based violence, to provide a better access to justice for affected women and girls. So pretty much looking from the victim's point of view. So how can they approach, how can they get support, how can they get legal support, how are these cases coming to court hearing and so on. This is what we would like to do. I think that is very much needed and also strongly supported from the respective ministry and other relevant justice institutions here in Tanzania. And the second completely different setup is in the area of natural resources And there you have in Tanzania, you know that I think 60% of the surface is considered as national park or protected area. So Tanzania is really one of the outstanding. I think it's the world champion in protecting its natural beauties and natural resources. With not only Serengeti but also with many other parks. And what happens is that more and more there are conflicts on the borders because the animals coming out of the park and population growth we have in Tanzania. Also villages and farming is moving closer to the borders, and there are more and more conflicts. We talk about human-wildlife conflicts. And the project is kind of geared towards mitigating those conflicts, preparing the villages, the communities better to respond or to avoid, and at the same time keeping the elephants. It's mainly elephants, but also other animals. Keeping the elephants in the parks or in the protected areas, really to kind of keep them away from each other to avoid casualties. And I think it's also a very nice, very interesting project. I just came from a field trip. Really have seen these villages, and it's impressive also what kind of stress these conflict is creating. And when you can contribute a little bit to make this better, I think I feel proud. It's nice.
You should. That's really, I love how diverse your portfolio is, but also just how interesting the work must be and rewarding. I think, to speak to your point before, I think that one of the lovely natural beauties of Tanzania is that we don't fence our national parks like in other countries. We allow for that organic, natural integration, but support is needed to make that successful for both sides. Very nice. So Mike, I'm going to go into our trivia session now, or section I should say, where I want to learn even more about you, the man behind the title. So really important questions these are. Answer honestly. So the first one is, I'm assuming your native language is German.
Yes.
And you speak English, obviously. Do you speak any other languages?
Yeah, bits and pieces. A bit of Russian.
Okay.
A bit of Serbian. Yeah. A bit of Spanish. But
I'm not even going to ask how, but wow, that's very impressive. So if you could click your fingers and speak another language fluently, what would you pick and why?
I would. It's a pretty boring answer, but I probably would take French.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I would have assumed with all those other languages you
Japanese
had French
or Chinese.
done.
I know, not French, not at all.
Swahili? No?
Yeah, I tried. Kidogo. No, but I think probably French. It would be for, I don't know what for. It's a political thing. It's also a lifestyle thing. And I like French actually. It sounds good.
It does sound
I would
good.
love to understand better.
Well, there's a goal for you. It can be done. It can be done. And also, if you can speak French, Swahili, and English, you are an incredibly capacity-built person to live in Africa, because you can be the connection between the Francophone and the Anglophone countries. Anyway,
and it will also link me up to our. I'm also in charge for the portfolio with the East African community, of course, where French is also one of the official languages.
Yes, although Swahili is the main one. Yes. I keep plugging.
I know.
Okay, so on to the next one. What is the best advice you've ever received from anyone, and who was it from? That's a tough one, I think.
Yeah, it's a tough one. What I'm thinking of at the moment a lot, and that is because some years back, I think it's a lady I met. I can't even remember her name, but I think she published a book on the topic, and it's about changing your life. Many times, changing your kind of way of living in your life would generate loads of positive energy experiences. It's sometimes hard, but it gives you a lot. And I really like that idea. And I think this is an advice I would. And sometimes when you in a kind of career way, it's difficult to kind of say, okay, I've done it. Let's try something else. But I personally really have this ambition to maybe experience this still a couple of times maybe in my life. And I think that was a really nice advice, not to kind of stay in the comfort zone, but really also be able to say, okay, now this is done, I've done it, I've gained this experience, I also have an impact, but now it's time for doing something else, completely different.
Yeah.
And I did this.
You've already done it.
Yeah, I did it, but maybe not enough. I mean, I still think there's kind of a room for more. But that was a very nice advice, and I also had a look at the book, but it's also again 2-3 years back, and it's really, she kind of had really great examples, and also what happened to her while doing this kind of really tremendous changes in her life, and what kind of how much she benefited from that in the long run.
It makes sense. It's kind of like, really enriching your life with different types of experiences and not getting too comfortable or stuck. I like that. I will borrow that and do some more reading.
I tried to find the book again.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we can share it with our audience. And maybe my last question is, what's your most treasured memory? You've obviously well-traveled and have worked in many different roles in your life. So where or what is your most treasured memory so far?
Yeah, I'll have to say, I haven't talked about family yet. So
I was going to say, don't forget the family.
It's probably time, and I have to. Well, I have a beautiful wife, and also 2 really beautiful and sweet daughters. And probably, I mean, the moment of when they kind of saw first time that life and light here, that was probably, in both cases, I have to say, was maybe the most important memory I have with me so far. It was definitely not traveling. I mean, I've seen many. I've also traveled a lot, but that was it was a different quality. And
life-changing stuff. Becoming a parent, right?
Yeah, that was something.
And I think there's something about being a dad to girls as well. I hear that from a lot of dads.
I don't have the comparison, but I guess they always say it's a special thing.
Yes,
But it would be probably also with boys.
Yeah, of course. All children are beautiful. Wonderful. Well, Mike, I think sadly our time is up. But it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I've certainly learned a lot. And when you get the name of that book or that author, please do share so that we can share with others as well. So thank you all for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And please don't forget to subscribe to our social media channels. You know where to find us because you're already here. So we're on YouTube. Please follow us though at empowerlimited. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter using the same handles. And don't forget to join the movement on our website, www.empower.co.tz. Until next time, thank you.